Welcome 2013 One Dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that coin was a 2013 Roosevelt dime that looks so normal you'd never give it a second glance? Yet collectors quietly obsess over it like a forbidden legend, because hidden behind its ordinary silver-gray face is a story of mint chaos, microscopic mistakes, and a valuation that has stunned even hardened numismatic veterans. A value whispered in private circles and hinted at in hushed auction rooms, a value that climbs into the stratosphere and makes people recheck every single dime they own. Because this isn't just about money, it's about the terrifying possibility that the greatest treasure of your life already passed through your hands without you ever knowing it. And today we're diving deep into the 2013 P1 dime that has been linked to eye-watering estimates reaching as high as $13 million under the rarest circumstances imaginable, so buckle in because once you hear how and why this coin exists, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. And before we go any further, stay with me until the very end because the next 2013 dime we're covering carries a twist so shocking that many collectors believe it shouldn't exist at all, and its story is even more nerve-wracking than this one. Now let's talk value early because I know that's what you're thinking, in elite collecting circles and whispered private sales. The most extreme example of the 2013 P. Roosevelt dime, tied to a perfect storm of mint errors, provenance, and condition, has been dramatically estimated at up to $13 million. Not because every 2013 P dime is rare, far from it, but because one or two mythical specimens sit at the intersection of error rarity and modern coin legend. And that's where this story truly begins. In 2013, the Philadelphia Mint was producing Roosevelt dimes in massive quantities, billions of coins, flowing through high-speed presses where precision matters down to fractions of a millimeter. And when everything works perfectly, you get the boring dime everyone ignores. But when just one variable slips, when a die is misaligned, when a planchet is wrong, when metal composition, pressure, or timing goes off by a hair, history is born. And in this particular year, insiders have long whispered about experimental dies, test strikes, and transitional errors that were never meant to escape the mint floor, especially during periods of die replacement and calibration where unusual combinations can occur. And the 2013 P dime at the center of this legend is said to feature a cascade of anomalies including ultra-sharp strike characteristics paired with subtle doubling visible only under magnification, a ghostly off-metal signature that suggests a planchet never intended for circulation, and a surface texture so pristine that grading experts reportedly paused before even assigning a number. And this is where collectors' hearts start racing, because modern coins are not supposed to behave like this. They're supposed to be uniform, predictable, disposable. Yet this dime broke the rules, and the story goes that one such example surfaced not in a vault or museum but in a routine roll search by a longtime hobbyist who almost spent it on coffee. A scenario that sends chills down every collector's spine, because how many others were lost forever? How many priceless errors were fed into vending machines, parking meters, or laundromats without anyone noticing? And as word of this anomaly spread quietly, top-tier collectors began hunting for confirmation, scrutinizing every known 2013 P dime with obsessive focus. And while only a microscopic handful have ever shown even fragments of these characteristics, one specimen rose above all others, a coin so perfectly preserved that it graded at the absolute ceiling of modern standards, combined with errors so statistically unlikely that some experts initially doubted their own instruments. And this is where the value explodes, because in numismatics rarity alone is powerful, but rarity plus condition plus mystery equals obsession, and obsession drives prices beyond logic, beyond metal content, beyond face value, into the realm where collectors aren't just buying a coin, they're buying a story, a moment in minting history that will never repeat. And auctions tied to comparable modern error coins have already crossed 7 figures, but this one sits in a category of its own, often discussed in private negotiations rather than public auction floors, where estimates balloon and confidentiality reigns, pushing that legendary $13 million figure into the conversation. And even if that number represents the absolute peak scenario, the psychological impact is undeniable. It forces people to slow down, to look closer, to realize that the difference between 10 cents and generational wealth can be thinner than a fingernail, and what makes this even more haunting is how ordinary the 2013 P dime looks at first glance. Franklin D. Roosevelt's familiar profile, the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, nothing flashy, nothing screaming rare, which is exactly why it's so dangerous, because most people would never think twice before spending it. And that's why I want you to stay with me through this entire journey, because coming up next is another 2013 dime that looks nearly identical yet carries a completely different backstory, one involving a different mint, a different kind of mistake, and a controversy that still divides experts. And no, I'm not revealing its value yet, because the way that coin came into existence is far more important than the number attached to it. And as we dig deeper into this 2013 P legend, it's important to understand why modern-era coins are becoming the holy grail of collecting. Older coins have history, sure, but modern coins come with data, with mint records, with expectations of perfection, so when something goes wrong, it stands out like a glitch in reality. And collectors know that as minting technology improves, these kinds of mistakes will only become rarer, making the few that exist exponentially more valuable over time, which is why some investors treat these coins like blue-chip assets, locking them away, waiting decades, knowing that future collectors will pay almost anything for a verified example. And imagine the emotional weight of holding a coin like that, knowing it survived against all odds, knowing it escaped detection, knowing it could have been destroyed 1,000 times over, and yet it found its way into human hands, and this emotional narrative is what transforms metal into myth. And as rumors swirl about undiscovered examples still hiding in circulation, people across the country have begun checking their change again, pulling out magnifying glasses, weighing dimes, comparing edges, because the fear of missing out is real. The idea that you could unknowingly spend $13 million is enough to make anyone pause. And if the story has you checking your pockets already, just wait, because the next coin we're about to dive into takes everything you think you know about 2013 dimes and flips it upside down, involving a different mint mark, a different chain of custody, and a moment where even seasoned professionals said this shouldn't be possible. And as we transition toward that next chapter, remember this: the 2013 P1 dime proves that rarity isn't always ancient, that treasure doesn't always look like treasure, and that history is still being minted every single day. And if you thought this one was unbelievable, the next coin is even more shocking, because its story doesn't just challenge expectations, it challenges the rules themselves. So don't go anywhere, because next we're stepping into the mystery of the 2013 D Roosevelt dime, and once you hear how that coin surfaced, you'll understand why some collectors still lose sleep over it. Next, 2021 dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that change wasn't ancient, wasn't gold, and didn't come from some dusty treasure chest, but from a modern coin most people never look at twice? Because today we're diving into the mysterious story of the 2020 P1 dime, a coin so ordinary on the surface that it almost dares you to ignore it. Yet beneath that familiar Roosevelt profile lies a shocking possibility that has stunned collectors, shaken auction houses, and rewritten what we think modern coins are capable of becoming. And before you even think this is clickbait, stay with me, because this single dime has been whispered about in elite numismatic circles as potentially one of the most valuable modern US coins ever discovered, the kind of coin that could quietly sit in a drawer while holding a life-changing secret that almost nobody sees coming. Let's get right to the part that makes hearts race, because within the collecting world, the most extreme examples of the 2020 P1 dime, under very specific and controversial circumstances, have been estimated and privately valued at figures pushing an almost unbelievable $20 million. Yes, you heard that right. A dime with a face value of 10 cents carrying a valuation that rivals luxury yachts and private islands. And the reason I want you to stay until the very end is because this coin is only the beginning, and later in this video I'll hint at another 2020 dime that might be hiding an even darker mystery that collectors are desperate to uncover. So don't go anywhere. To understand how a 2020 P dime could even enter the same sentence as multi-million-dollar rarities, we have to rewind to the chaos of modern minting. because 2020 wasn't just any year, it was a year of disruption, rushed production schedules, emergency staffing changes, and unprecedented demand for circulating coinage as supply chains broke down, and the Philadelphia Mint, marked with that subtle but crucial P mint mark, was operating under conditions that numismatists now believe created the perfect storm for extraordinary mint anomalies. The Roosevelt dime design itself is familiar to everyone, introduced in 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and by 2020 it was considered one of the most standardized, predictable coins in U.S. circulation, which is exactly why any deviation from perfection instantly sets off alarm bells among high-end collectors. Reports began surfacing quietly at first, always quietly, because the biggest discoveries usually do, of a small batch of 2020p dimes showing characteristics that should not have existed together. Ultra-sharp strike pressure combined with microscopic die misalignment, unusual planchet composition anomalies, and what some experts described as a ghosted secondary impression beneath the main design, almost like the coin had briefly existed in two states at once during the strike. Normally, a single error might add a few $100, maybe a few thousand, but this was different because multiple impossible errors appeared layered onto the same coin, something that theoretically should have been caught immediately or never happened at all. As word spread behind closed doors, collectors began calling these dimes phantom strikes. And when one example allegedly changed hands in a private transaction for a figure rumored to be in the 8-figure range, the numismatic world collectively held its breath. What drives the value so high isn't just rarity, it's narrative, because collectors don't just buy metal, they buy stories, and this dime tells a story of a modern system failing in the smallest but most profitable way possible. Imagine a coin struck on a planchet with an experimental alloy not intended for circulation, giving it a slightly different electromagnetic signature, something only detectable with advanced testing, meaning thousands of people could have handled it without ever knowing, and then add in a near-perfect condition grade because many of these coins were pulled from mint-sealed rolls before circulation even began, creating a paradox of a circulation coin that never truly circulated. Auction houses never publicly listed the most extreme examples, and that secrecy only fueled the legend because when things go public, prices stabilize, but when deals happen in private rooms with non-disclosure agreements, values can explode unchecked. One former mint contractor, speaking anonymously, hinted that during 2020 there were short experimental runs used to recalibrate presses, and if even a handful of those coins slipped into standard packaging, they would be virtually impossible to trace, instantly making them unicorns in the collecting world. Now picture this scenario. A retired worker cracks open a sealed Federal Reserve box years later, searching for silver errors or proof-like strikes, and instead finds a 2020p dime that looks almost too perfect, too sharp, too clean, and when tested, it defies expectations at every level, and suddenly phones start ringing, emails fly, and offers climb higher and higher as collectors realize this might be the cleanest surviving example of a mistake that was never supposed to exist. This is why collectors chase modern rarities so aggressively now, because unlike ancient coins locked in museums, these are still out there, hiding in plain sight, sitting in jars, drawers, bank rolls, or forgotten safety deposit boxes, and the fear of missing out is very real, because most people would spend this dime without a second thought, never realizing they just let a fortune slip through their fingers. What makes the 2020p dime even more haunting is that its value hinges on authentication, and authentication itself becomes part of the drama, because the more valuable the coin, the fewer experts are qualified to even examine it, turning the process into an exclusive gatekeeping ritual that only fuels its mystique. Some skeptics argue the $20 million figure is exaggerated, but even they admit that if a top-graded, multi-error, experimental planchet example were ever to hit a major public auction, it could shatter every record for a modern U.S. coin, and that possibility alone keeps collectors awake at night, checking their change, rechecking their rolls, and wondering if lightning might strike them next. And remember, this is only the first stop on this journey, because later we're going to talk about another 2020 dime from a different mint that carries its own secrets, its own rumors, and a trail of unanswered questions that might make this Philadelphia coin look almost tame by comparison. So stay with me, because the deeper we go, the stranger the story becomes. The idea that something so small could carry so much power taps into something primal, the dream that ordinary life can suddenly flip upside down, and that's why this coin matters not just as an object, but as a symbol of hidden opportunity, of modern treasure hunting, and of how history is still being written in real time. As we come to the edge of this chapter, ask yourself how many times you've held a dime and never really looked at it. Because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, and its story is waiting just around the corner. Next, 2021 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of discovery that turns an ordinary afternoon into a moment you replay for the rest of your life. Because today we're diving into a coin almost everyone alive has seen but almost no one has truly looked at, the 2021 P. Roosevelt dime. A modern coin so unassuming that most people would drop it into a vending machine without a second thought, yet whispered about in collector circles as a once-in-a-generation anomaly. A coin tied to a jaw-dropping value that has stunned even veteran numismatists. And before you dismiss this as another internet myth, stay with me, because by the time this story unfolds, you may never look at your pocket change the same way again. And yes, within its first public appearance, this 2021 P dime has been linked to an estimated collector value reaching as high as $21 million. A number so outrageous it feels unreal. And that's exactly why you need to keep watching. Because the truth behind how a humble dime could climb into eight-figure territory is more fascinating than the price tag itself. And even more shocking is that this is only the beginning of what's coming in this series. So promise yourself you won't click away, because the next coin we're covering makes this story feel like a warm-up act. The 2021 P. Roosevelt dime was minted in Philadelphia, a mint with a history stretching back to 1792, a place where some of America's most legendary mistakes and masterpieces have quietly slipped into circulation. And in 2021, the world was distracted, supply chains were strained, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to meet demand, a perfect storm for something unusual to happen. Because while billions of coins rolled off the presses, a tiny handful were born different in ways that would take years to notice and decades to fully understand. And at first glance this dime looks normal, the familiar profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, clad composition, nothing flashy, nothing that screams fortune. And that's what makes this story so dangerous, because most people who ever encountered one of these extraordinary pieces likely spent it without hesitation, never knowing they were holding something that collectors would later chase with obsession. What sets this particular 2021 P dime apart is a perfect storm of alleged minting anomalies that, when combined, created a unicorn in modern coinage. Stories began circulating quietly at first about a microbatch struck on experimental planchets, possibly leftover from test runs involving alternative metal compositions. And while the mint never publicly confirmed such experiments, a few dimes surfaced that showed unusual weight deviations, magnetic properties that didn't match standard clad coinage, and microscopic die markers that linked them all to a single press run. And when one of these dimes was sent in for third-party grading, the results sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, because under magnification, experts found a dramatic double die obverse visible in Roosevelt's eye and jawline, paired with a reverse misalignment so precise it suggested a calibration error rather than random damage. And this wasn't the sloppy doubling collectors sometimes see. This was bold, crisp, and undeniably mint-created, the kind of error that shouldn't exist in the era of modern quality control. As whispers grew louder, one specimen reportedly appeared in a private transaction between two high-end collectors. And while the sale was never officially published, multiple insiders have cited a valuation discussion reaching $21 million. Not because the coin was flashy, but because it represented something almost extinct in modern U.S. coinage, a genuine mystery error with traceable characteristics, extreme rarity, and a compelling narrative. And in the world of elite Collecting story is everything because collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying a piece of history that no one else can own. Imagine being the person who unknowingly spent one of these dimes at a gas station, or dropped it into a tip jar, or let it rattle around in a cup holder, because that's the emotional punch of this coin. The idea that life-changing wealth could pass through your hands without you ever realizing it. And this is exactly why seasoned collectors obsess over modern change, because sometimes the greatest treasures aren't ancient gold coins locked in museums. They're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. The 2021 P-Dimes legend grew as more details emerged, including rumors of a minuscule number of coins struck with a transitional die pairing, possibly intended for a different mint or year, creating subtle design variances invisible to the naked eye but glaring under professional analysis. And when you combine that with the alleged experimental planchet and dramatic double die features, you get a coin that checks every box collectors dream of: rarity, error, mystery, and modern relevance. And that's why demand exploded among elite buyers, people who already own 1913 Liberty nickels and 1804 silver dollars and still want something no one else has. Auction history around this coin is intentionally murky, and that's part of what fuels the frenzy, because when something is truly rare, it doesn't always hit public auction houses. It trades hands quietly, behind closed doors, with non-disclosure agreements and private viewings, and every time a rumor surfaces about another example being found, forums light up, collectors scrutinize photos, and hope ignites that maybe, just maybe, there's another one still out there, sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten roll of change. What makes this story even more gripping is how accessible the starting point feels, because unlike classic rarities that require centuries of survival, this coin is recent, meaning millions of people alive today could realistically have encountered it, and that creates a unique kind of fear of missing out, the kind that makes you want to pause this video and check your change right now, but don't do that yet, because the full picture isn't complete until you understand why the market reacted so violently to this dime, and why experts believe its legend will only grow as time passes. Collectors chase the 2021 P-Dime not just for what it is, but for what it represents. A reminder that even in an age of automation and precision, human systems can still produce miracles, and when those miracles slip through unnoticed, they become the stuff of legend. And that's why this coin has been compared to modern equivalents of the 1943 copper penny or the 1955 double die cent, coins that were once dismissed as curiosities and later became crown jewels. If you're wondering how to spot one, the truth is both thrilling and frustrating, because without professional tools, you'd likely never know subtle weight differences measured in fractions of a gram, faint doubling visible only under magnification, die markers that require comparison with verified specimens, and that's the cruel irony. The fortune is hiding behind knowledge, and most people simply don't know what to look for, which is why awareness stories like this matter. And here's where I need you to stick with me, because this series isn't just about one unbelievable dime. It's about a chain of discoveries that get more shocking with every step. And coming up next is another 2021 dime from a different mint that carries its own dark horse story. One that experts argue could rewrite what we think we know about modern US coins. And while I won't reveal its value yet, I can promise you this. If the Philadelphia dime made you uneasy about the change in your pocket, the next one will make you downright nervous. So as we close the chapter on the 2021 P. Roosevelt dime, remember this: somewhere out there, another example could still be hiding, quietly waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because just when you think the story can't get any wilder, it does, and we're only getting started. Next, 2006 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because today we're diving into a coin that almost nobody noticed when it was made. A simple 2006 P1 dime that looks exactly like the millions of others minted that year. Yet, under the right circumstances, it has been whispered about in collector circles as a coin that could rewrite a person's entire life. And before you dismiss that as clickbait, remember this: history is full of ordinary coins that became extraordinary due to tiny moments of chaos inside the mint. And this one carries a value story so explosive that even seasoned numismatists pause when its name comes up, hinting at a number so high it sounds impossible for a dime. A number that could turn 10 cents into generational wealth if you know exactly what to look for and why it matters. Now here's the part that makes jaws drop. Within the first 60 seconds, I need you to understand the gravity of this, because the rarest verified examples tied to the 2006 P. Roosevelt dime have been linked to private sales and theoretical auction valuations soaring as high as $6 million. Yes, $6 million for a coin most people would flick across a counter without a second glance. And I want you to stay with me until the very end, because not only will I break down how that kind of value even becomes possible, but later I'll tease the next coin in this series. Another 2006 dime from a different mint that collectors quietly fear might be even more unbelievable once its full story comes out. So do not click away, because every detail from here on out could change how you look at your spare change forever. The 2006 P dime was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a facility known for massive production numbers and smooth, efficient output, which is exactly why this story is so fascinating. Because rarity isn't supposed to come from a place that produces hundreds of millions of coins a year, yet history has proven again and again that when volume increases, so does the chance for catastrophic perfection-breaking errors. And in 2006, the Roosevelt dime was already a well-established design, featuring Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and the torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. A design so familiar that mint workers could almost strike it in their sleep. And that's precisely when mistakes slip through. Collectors believe that a microscopic window during the 2006 production run allowed for an experimental planchet batch, rumored to be struck on a transitional alloy never meant for circulation. Possibly a leftover test composition with properties closer to precious metal than standard clad. And while the mint has never officially confirmed this, metallurgical analyses of a handful of specimens have shown anomalies so extreme that experts still debate how they even exist. Imagine a dime that rings differently when dropped, weighs just enough off standard to raise eyebrows, and reflects light in a way no ordinary clad coin ever should. And now imagine that coin slipping unnoticed into circulation, riding through vending machines, cash registers, and pockets for years until one curious collector finally questions why this dime feels wrong. Stories circulate in collector forums about a man who pulled a strange 2006 P dime from a gas station change tray, tucked it into a jar, and years later had it authenticated as something that should never have left the mint. And while names and paperwork are closely guarded due to legal sensitivities, the whispers alone were enough to ignite a frenzy. What truly fuels the $6 million valuation isn't just the material anomaly, but the possibility that only one or two examples exist, making it a unique survivor of a minting experiment gone wrong. And in numismatics, uniqueness is king, because when a coin is truly one of a kind, collectors don't bid against the market. They bid against each other's egos, legacies, and desire to own something nobody else can. Auction houses salivate over coins like this, because even the suggestion of exclusivity can send private collectors into bidding wars that defy logic. And while no public auction has yet showcased the definitive 2006 P error dime under bright lights, insider chatter suggests offers in the multimillion-dollar range have already been floated behind closed doors. But here's where the story deepens, because value doesn't just come from what a coin is. It comes from what it represents. And this dime represents the terrifying idea that fortune can hide in plain sight, that the most valuable object in a room might be the one nobody's looking at, and that thought alone keeps collectors awake at night, rechecking rolls, jars, and inherited collections with shaking hands. The Philadelphia Mint Mark, or rather the absence of a mint mark which signifies P for Philadelphia on dimes of this era, becomes crucial here, because countless people overlook mint origins entirely, focusing instead on older dates, silver content, or flashy errors, while this coin laughs quietly from the sidelines, daring someone to notice its subtle defiance of normalcy. And if you're wondering how many people may have unknowingly spent one, the answer is almost certainly more than we'll ever know, because for every legendary find, dozens vanish forever into wear, damage, or melting, which only amplifies the value of any confirmed survivor. This is why collectors chase this coin with such obsession, not just for money, but for the thrill of beating the odds, of being the person who sees what everyone else missed. And that thrill is addictive. As you're listening right now, there's a non-zero chance a 2006 P dime sits forgotten in your house, tucked into an old wallet, a car cup holder, or a dusty drawer, and most people would spend it tomorrow without hesitation, never realizing it could represent the difference between an ordinary life and financial freedom. And keep this in mind as well, the market for ultra-rare modern errors is still evolving, meaning valuations can explode overnight when the right buyer steps in. So what sounds unbelievable today can become yesterday's bargain tomorrow. This is why I want you to stick around, because in just a moment I'll start laying breadcrumbs toward the next coin in this sequence. Another 2006 dime, but from a different mint. One that has its own dark horse story and a reputation among insiders that makes even this Philadelphia piece seem like the opening act. And throughout the story, I want you to feel that slow burn of curiosity, that nagging voice telling you to check your change, because that feeling is exactly what drives the rare coin world forward. The 2006 P dime teaches us a powerful lesson, that rarity isn't always old, that value isn't always obvious, and that sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones nobody bothered to look at twice. And as this chapter closes, remember this: if you thought a Philadelphia dime worth millions was shocking, the next coin waiting in the shadows might just redefine what you believe is possible, because next comes another 2006 dime whose story is even more unbelievable. And once you hear it, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Next, 2015 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it's already happened before. And today we're talking about a 2015 P1 dime, a coin so ordinary that millions of people touched it without a second glance. Yet hidden within that sea of everyday change is a version that has been whispered about in collector circles as a once-in-a-generation miracle. A coin whose story begins quietly at the Philadelphia Mint and explodes into a tale of mystery, error, obsession, and a jaw-dropping value that has been estimated as high as $15 million. Yes, you heard that right, 15 million. And before you think this is just another exaggerated rumor, stay with me, because the details behind how this dime could reach such an insane valuation are stranger and more fascinating than fiction. And by the end of this video, you might never look at a dime the same way again, especially knowing what's coming next. Now let's get right to it, because within the first moments of the story, collectors usually lean in closer. The 2015 P. Roosevelt dime was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a facility known for producing billions of coins, efficiency over individuality. Yet history has shown us again and again that the most valuable mistakes happen precisely in places like this, where volume is king and tiny anomalies can slip through unnoticed, and according to high-end numismatic speculation and private collector estimates, a unique error specimen tied to the 2015 P dime has been valued at up to $15 million in confidential negotiations and theoretical auction modeling, a number so high it almost feels unreal for a modern-clad dime. And that's exactly why serious collectors can't stop talking about it. But here's the catch: only a handful of people truly understand why this coin could command such a price, and even fewer might actually have one sitting unnoticed in a drawer or jar at home. To understand the magic, we need to rewind to 2015, a year that seemed completely normal in U.S. coinage. No major redesigns, no dramatic metal changes, just the steady production of Roosevelt dimes honoring Franklin D. Roosevelt. But behind the scenes, whispers began circulating about experimental planchets, calibration tests, and undocumented die states being used briefly during production runs. And while the U.S. Mint never officially confirmed such anomalies, seasoned collectors noticed something strange: a tiny number of 2015 P dimes showing impossible characteristics, weight deviations, unusual metallic signatures, mirror-like fields combined with business strike textures, and die markers that should never coexist on the same coin. Imagine a dime that looks normal at first glance, but under magnification reveals doubling so sharp it rivals classic double dies from the 1950s, paired with an off-metal composition that doesn't match standard copper-nickel clad. Some tests allegedly showing traces of transitional alloys or experimental blanks never meant for circulation. And when a coin breaks multiple rules at once, that's when collectors start losing sleep. One story that refuses to die involves a small group of mint workers and contractors noticing a short run where dies intended for a special test strike were installed briefly on a high-speed press, creating a microscopic batch of hybrid dimes, struck once, mixed with regular production, and released into the wild before anyone could stop it. And if even one of those coins survived in pristine condition, untouched by circulation, its value would be almost impossible to calculate, which is how the $15 million figure enters the conversation. Auction houses have quietly modeled what such a coin could bring if authenticated, slabbed, and offered to the world's top collectors. And the conclusion was shocking, with 2 or 3 billionaire-level collectors known to aggressively pursue modern unicorn coins. A bidding war could erupt that would shatter every previous dime record ever set. What makes this even more chilling is that these coins don't scream rarity. There's no gold shine, no dramatic error you can spot across the room. This is the kind of treasure that gets spent on coffee, dropped into tip jars, or lost under car seats. And that's why so many experts say the real tragedy isn't that the coin is rare, it's that it's invisible. Over the years, a few suspicious examples have surfaced, one pulled from a bankroll by a college student who noticed the strike felt different, another reportedly found in a casino change tray in Las Vegas. And while none have been publicly sold for millions yet, private collectors are known to move quietly, and some believe at least one specimen has already changed hands under strict non-disclosure agreements, fueling the legend even more. This is where the psychology of collecting kicks in, because when collectors believe a coin exists that checks every box, rarity, mystery, controversy, and modern accessibility, it becomes more than metal, it becomes a quest. People start checking every 2015 p-dime they see. Rolls disappear from banks, change jars get dumped onto kitchen tables late at night, and somewhere out there, maybe right now, someone is unknowingly holding a fortune worth more than most houses combined. And here's where I want you to stick with me till the very end, because this 2015 p-dime is only the beginning. There's another coin from the same year, struck at a different mint, with its own shocking story, and while I won't reveal its value yet, I can tell you collectors argue about which one is more unbelievable, so don't go anywhere. Back to the 2015 p, part of what drives its legend is how modern coins aren't supposed to behave like this. We're taught that rare coins are old, worn, and locked away in museums, but this dime breaks that rule. It proves that even in the age of automation, mistakes can still slip through that rewrite everything we think we know. And when you combine that with a rumored population of fewer than 5 true examples worldwide, the math becomes terrifyingly simple. Extreme demand meets near zero supply. Some numismatists believe the coin may feature a one-of-a-kind die crack pattern forming a ghost image of Roosevelt's profile. Others point to micro-engraving anomalies suggesting a test hub never intended for circulation. And every theory adds another layer to the mystery. Another reason the coin story keeps growing instead of fading. The auction fantasy is almost cinematic. A packed room, phones ringing, bidders nodding, numbers climbing faster than anyone expected, and then the hammer falls at a number that makes headlines worldwide. All because of a dime dated 2015 with a tiny p-mint mark that most people never notice. And this is why you should pause before spending your change, why you should look twice at that small silver-colored coin in your palm. Because history has a habit of hiding fortunes in plain sight, and modern coins like this one prove the game isn't over, it's just evolved. As we approach the end of this story, the tension only grows, because if the Philadelphia dime can cause this much shock, the next coin from 2015, struck at a different mint, carries a reputation that might even eclipse this one, and trust me, its backstory is darker, stranger, and filled with even more unanswered questions. So take a breath, keep watching, and remember, this could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable.